an attendant there. And Ken Grundy well away from the line with the clerk of the course. But they are loading up now for the Sandown Guineas. Coming into line, Shadow Park is ready. Al Mahur has gone up. Now Lords of Leaping goes forward. Kistadan set. Spirit of Tara being replated at the moment. Silent Action on the move with Ken Grundy. Light of Prosperity, Volatant. Barely a moment, well down the track at the moment. Tara's Hall still to come along. Still about 6 or 7 of them to come up. Field of 13 for this year's Guineas on a heavy track today. And Binding, of course, has created a tremendous impression, first of all, under the lights up there at Canterbury, but came to Melbourne for the Melbourne Cup week, and we saw him last week on a heavy track, and he stormed home. Most of the horses have been winning sort of close to the speed today, so it'll be interesting to see whether he can offset that. Now, the last couple coming up. Tara's Hall goes into line. Spirit of Tara looks as though the work's been completed now. The rider about to jump back aboard. Volatant, Barely a Moment, Light of Prosperity and the Barrier Blanket to come up. And the 13 runners will be set for one of the features today. Race number 6, the Sport 927 Sandown Guineas. Now, Volatant coming along. Volatant comes up now. Spirit of Tara, Barely a Moment, Light of Prosperity. Bit of a nibble at big odds for Spirit of Tara. It's come in about 8 points at big odds, still about $23. Favourite Binding at $2.30, $5.50 now for Al Mahur. Farrier's work has been completed on Spirit of Tara. It's about to get a lead up now. And then Barely a Moment. Light of Prosperity is in, and we're just about ready to go. As the last one to come up is Barely a Moment. They'll be ready for the Sandown Guineas. A break in the weather, no rain at the moment. Now Barely a Moment goes up. Set to go. Line is good. Stand. Just waiting on the signal. Now a bit of movement too from the outside. Look to be ready. Signal. Racing in the Guineas. Left in a very good line too. Al Mahur, one of the first to bounce out here from Ken Grundy and Barely a Moment. Rockford Bay getting up on the inside, and Light of Prosperity starting to push forward. Ken Grundy just off them when they settle. Light of Prosperity going up on the outside of Al Mahur. They're out a little wide. Rockford Bay the fence, and Barely a Moment has gone up fourth on the outside. A length then Ken Grundy 3 deep around Silent Action. Shadow Park the fence. A length further back Volatant, Kistadan. Further back then came Spirit of Tara, Tara's Hall, Lords of Leaping, and Binding is last of all when they settle in the Guineas. Light of Prosperity a length and a half, Al Mahur, and Rockford Bay a length third. Getting over now to be one off the fence, and fourth Barely a Moment. Shadow Park is fifth. Outside at Ken Grundy as they slow up in front. Silent Action out 3 deep, and then further back Volatant, Kistadan the rail. A length into Spirit of Tara, 1 Lords of Leaping, a half Tara's Hall, and Binding last of all at the 800 metre mark, the halfway mark, 15 lengths from the lead. Light of Prosperity led 3/4, Al Mahur. Then Rockford Bay under some pressure on the outside, Silent Action. Barely a Moment back fifth in the middle. Then came Volatant out deep. A length further back, Spirit of Tara, followed over on the inside by Shadow Park, Tara's Hall, Ken Grundy and Binding last of all, given a crack with a whip there as they turn for home down to the 500 metre mark. Light of Prosperity from Al Mahur, then Rockford Bay. Barely a Moment from Kistadan the rail. Further back, Light Action. Binding still about 8 to 9 lengths off them. Volatant down the middle with also Tara's Hall, and Binding starting to wind up. He's coming with a run now. Barely a Moment getting out after the leader Al Mahur, and here comes Binding. He's coming with a withering run with Volatant in the middle. The leader Al Mahur. Binding's got them though. He's charged to the front, Binding from Al Mahur, and Binding, what a brilliant galloper he is. Binding wins it 3/4 to either Barely a Moment or Al Mahur. Fourth home is Lords of Leaping out wide, followed by Kistadan. Then further back was Volatant from Rockford Bay. Spirit of Tara, a gap in the race, Light of Prosperity. Well back in the race then Shadow Park from Tara's Hall. Silent Action, and Ken Grundy back near the tail. Oh, brilliant galloper, number 5 Binding. Number 5, he was under the whip. Give it a crack with a whip by the rider, Corey Brown, on the home turn, and Brown and John Hawkes combined for 3 for the day. And Binding with a big finish has won. Number 1 after the photo, Barely a Moment, has got second. And third goes to number 2, Al Mahur. Numbers after the Sport 927 Sandown Guineas are 5, 1 and 2. 5, 1 and 2. Binding, Barely a Moment, Al Mahur, 5, 1, 2. Oh, he's a cracker, this horse. He really is. He gave them a start. They dropped the speed mid-race, which was going to make it difficult on him. And if you were on him at the fairly shorts coming to the turn, you wouldn't have been terribly wrapped in the way the race was unfolding, because Brown had given him a crack around the tail. And he just let this horse come to the centre of the track, a very even playing field here. And he's come down the centre, and he really put in those giant strides and put the issue beyond doubt in about the last 40 or 50 metres. Big win. A big win for a horse who's certainly going to go places come the next 12 months. Exciting horse. Number 5, Binding, and his return is 2:30 and 1:40. One Barely a Moment, 3:20, running a great race today from a wide gate. And 2 Elmaher, $1.90. So
Binding, at only his 4th start, has taken the Sandown Guineas ridden by Corey Brown. Andrew and Alf, I have to be honest, I thought he was struggling when they turned for home. He got 1 or 2 cracks with the whip and didn't seem to respond. But Corey kept at him, and then he started to really stoke up.
I think as the horse gradually progressed, he was given an easy time in the early stages of the race. The speed was adequate up front, and when he actually sort of got a bit of a kick going down the hill, that's where he appeared to get a little bit uncomfortable. But Corey gave him plenty of time, gave him that slap. Once he got to the outside, simply electrifying. And here, Andrew, go for your life. Here's Wayne Hawkes.
Yeah, Wayne Hawkes is here. Wayne, how good was that?
Yeah, it was pretty good, Andrew. You know, he sat back off him and he didn't look like he was really handling it that well, but it was a big performance.
Your father tossed it around this week whether he'd in fact back up 7 days a young 3-year-old.
Well, that's always the thing. I mean, you know, you win today and everything worked out to plan, but you know, you get beat and you think maybe I shouldn't have done it. So just glad Mr. Hawkes was right.
Plan to go back and do the natural thing?
Oh, you got to ride the horse to the horse. So Corey knows the horse obviously inside out and rode him pretty well.
Spell now, I guess.
Yeah, he's definitely going the paddock.
Yeah, I know that you don't put too much pressure on them. That's something that your father isn't keen to. But where do you put him in the stable at the moment? Because we've heard through the spring that you're rebuilding your team, but Binding's certainly shot to the top at this stage.
Yeah, well, look, he's a nice horse on the way up, and he's got to get to that Group 1 level yet, but he hasn't done anything wrong. So it's up to Dad where he wants to take him now. It's probably a good position to be in, isn't it?
I guess it's probably one of the more promising horses for the autumn in Sydney, anyway.
Yeah, he is. He is. He's got Sydney and Melbourne to obviously consider where he wants to run the horse. So at least we know he can go both directions, yep. which is a big plus, and he can at least handle a wet track.
All right, well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Wayne Hawkes joining us. Binding beating Barely a Moment, Elmaher 5-1 and 2 in the Sandown Guineas.
Thanks, Andrew. And they might have a very nice 2-year-old in Sydney from what we saw earlier today. A 2-year-old filly by the name of Nemesis, who won the 2nd race at Rosehill. She absolutely bolted in. She raced a bit like Binding. She got a long way back, but she cleared out and won by about 5 or 6 lengths in the end. She's very good, Nemesis.